Ethan, you can't ignore Mason like this. He's our son. I pleaded with him, my voice breaking as I stood in the kitchen. Is he, Lauren? Is he really? Ethan's eyes bore into mine, filled with doubt and cold anger. Those words cut through me like a knife. I stared at Ethan, my husband of 14 years, the father of our children, struggling to process what he was implying. We were in our home, a charming suburban house in Ohio. The walls that saw our laughter and love now echoed with our tension and confusion. The recent trip to the amusement park was supposed to be a fun family outing, but it only magnified Ethan's coldness towards Mason, our middle son. Ethan, what are you talking about? Of course he's our son. Why would you say such a thing? I demanded, trying to hold back tears. Ethan glanced away, clenching his jaw. He's different, Lauren. I see it. The way he looks, the way he acts. He's not like the other kids. That's ridiculous. Mason is just going through a phase. He's a bit sensitive, but he's our boy. Do you hear yourself? My voice rose with frustration. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he turned around, grabbing his jacket and heading towards the door. I'm going out, he muttered. As the door closed behind him, I slumped into a chair, trying to steady my breathing. Memories of happier times flashed in my mind, birthday parties, family dinners, and vacations. But now, everything felt fractured, like the very foundation of our family was cracking. Later, I found Mason in his room, sitting on his bed with his toy cars scattered around. His big blue eyes looked up at me, confused and filled with unshed tears. Mom, why doesn't Dad play with me anymore? He asked. His innocent question broke my heart, and I had to fight back tears. I sat beside him, hugging him close. Dad's just busy with work, sweetheart. He loves you very much. Then why is he always so mad at me? Mason's voice trembled, and I felt his small body shaking against mine. I struggled to find the right words. Sometimes grown-ups have things on their minds that make them act differently, but it's not your fault, Mason. Never think that, okay? He nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. I kissed the top of his head and helped him with his cars, trying to give him some semblance of normalcy. When Ethan came home, I cornered him in the living room. You need to stop this, Ethan. Mason is hurting. He doesn't understand why you're distant. Ethan sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Lauren, I don't know. Something doesn't feel right. Are you seriously questioning his place in this family? I demanded, anger rising within me. I'm questioning everything, he snapped back. I can't shake this feeling that he's not mine. I was stunned into silence, watching as Ethan retreated upstairs. His words hung in the air like a toxic cloud, seeped into every corner of our home. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. What happened to the man I married, the father who once adored our children? I kept thinking of ways to bridge the gap between Ethan and Mason, but every scenario seemed impossible. The next morning, I decided to confront Ethan again. We need to talk, I said firmly as he was getting ready for work. He stopped, looking at me with tired eyes. What now? If you truly believe Mason isn't yours, why don't we get a DNA test? Will that ease your mind? Ethan paused, his face flushing with anger. You want to solve everything with a test? He spat. I want to solve this for Mason's sake, I replied calmly. We owe him that much. Ethan stared at me for a moment, then stormed out of the house without another word. I pressed my lips together, vowing to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. I couldn't let this tear our family apart. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. The tension at home was gnawing at me. During lunch, I decided to call Paula, my best friend since college. Hey, Paula, can we talk? It's urgent, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course, Lauren. Meet me at Joe's Cafe in half an hour, she replied. Perfect. Thanks. I rushed to Joe's Cafe, my mind swirling with thoughts. Seeing Paula's familiar smile as I walked in gave me a sense of relief. We found a quiet corner and ordered our usual coffees. So what's going on? Paula asked, concern etched on her face. Ethan thinks Mason isn't his son, I blurted out, barely containing my frustration. What? How could he even think that? Paula leaned in, her eyes wide. He's been distant, and it's affecting Mason. When I asked him why, he dropped this bombshell, something about feeling Mason isn't like the other boys. Paula took a sip of her coffee, pondering my words. Do you think he believes you cheated? The question hit me hard. I don't know. We've had our ups and downs, but I never gave him a reason to doubt me. Paula nodded thoughtfully. You might need more than just a DNA test, Lauren. There could be something else behind his suspicions. Like what? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Maybe he's projecting. Maybe he's the one who did something wrong, Paula suggested gently. I hadn't considered that. You mean he cheated on me? It's possible. Sometimes the guilty ones are quick to accuse, Paula said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. Back home, the tension was palpable. Ethan's cold shoulder towards Mason was getting more pronounced. At dinner, he barely spoke to Mason, focusing only on our eldest, Jake, and our youngest, Sarah. Dad, can we all go to the park on Saturday? Mason asked, his voice hopeful. Ethan barely looked up from his plate. We'll see, Mason. Mason's face fell, and I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. Why are you always ignoring me? Mason finally exploded, his small fists clenched. Ethan looked taken aback, but said nothing. I jumped in to defuse the situation. Mason, let's talk after dinner, okay? Finish your meal. After dinner, I found Mason in his room, tears streaming down his cheeks. Mom, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, Mason. Sometimes grown-ups don't act the way they should, I said, pulling him into a hug. But Dad hates me, he whispered. I fought the urge to cry and held him tighter. No, sweetheart. He's just not himself lately. That night, as Ethan worked late, I did some digging. Searching through his things, I found nothing out of the ordinary. Finally, I decided to confront Ethan directly. The next morning, as he was getting ready for work, I stopped him. Ethan, we need to clear this up. Why do you think Mason isn't yours? Do you think I cheated on you? He looked at me with tired eyes. I don't know what to think anymore, Lauren. Something just feels wrong. Well, it's tearing our family apart. For Mason's sake, let's do the DNA test, I insisted. Ethan shook his head, frustration evident. No, Lauren, I don't need a test to tell me what I already feel. With that, he left the house, leaving me more determined than ever to find out what was really going on. Ethan's behavior had changed drastically, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Paula might be right. As I tucked Mason into bed that night, I resolved to find the truth, no matter what it took. The following weekend, Ethan's coldness reached a new peak. He snapped at Mason for the smallest things, leaving a toy on the floor, not finishing his meal. I knew I had to take action. On Sunday morning, when Ethan went out for a run, I decided it was time. I went into Mason's room and began carefully collecting a few strands of his hair, making sure not to wake him up. Later that week, after submitting the samples to a private lab, my mind was in turmoil. I kept busy at work, but my thoughts drifted back to the test. What if the results confirmed Ethan's fears? What if they didn't? The days dragged on until I could finally pick up the results. Holding the envelope, my hands shook. I opened it, reading the words that turned my world upside down. No biological relation between Ethan Walker and Mason Walker. The shock settled in, but the next lines shattered my reality completely. No biological relation between Lauren Walker and Mason Walker. I leaned against the wall, the paper slipping from my fingers. My breath came in shallow gasps. Mason wasn't just not Ethan's son. He wasn't mine either. My mind raced with possibilities, none making any sense. That night, Ethan noticed my pale face and red eyes. Lauren, what's going on? I handed him the test results, unable to speak. He read them, and his face turned ashen. What does this mean? It means Mason isn't our son, I managed to say. I have to find out what happened. Ethan's anger quickly turned to confusion. How is that even possible? I'm going to find out, I replied, my voice resolute. Over the next week, I pieced together years of forgotten details. Laundry mishaps, hospital mix-ups, every memory ran through my mind. I decided to confront the hospital where Mason was born. I arranged a meeting with the hospital administrator. Sitting across from him in a small, sterile office, I felt the weight of my questions pressing down on me. Mrs. Walker, how can I help you today? He asked, glancing up from his papers. Years ago, I gave birth to a son here. I believe there might have been a mix-up. The DNA test shows he's not related to us biologically, I said, my voice steady but filled with urgency. The administrator's face paled. That's a serious accusation. Are you sure? I handed over the test results. I need to know the truth. He studied the papers and then nodded. We'll conduct an internal investigation immediately. Please understand this will take time. Days turned into weeks, each one filled with mounting anxiety. I barely spoke to Ethan. Our conversations reduced to urgent whispers when the kids weren't around. We both knew our lives were about to change forever. Finally, the hospital called. Mrs. Walker, we found a discrepancy in the records from that day. It appears another child was born around the same time as Mason. Can you come in? I hung up, a mix of dread and hope churning inside me. I needed to know who this child was and what happened to my real son. Ethan and I sat quietly in the waiting room, waiting for the answers that would shape our future. The hospital administrator finally emerged, holding a file. Mrs. Walker, Mr. Walker, we've discovered disturbing information. Your child might have been swapped deliberately. There's a name we need to check. Do you remember anyone named Heather Davis? The name jolted Ethan. He looked at me, horrified. Heather, she was someone I knew before we got married. My heart raced. We need to talk to her. Ethan's guilt-stricken face only confirmed my suspicions. Someone had manipulated our lives, and it was time to find out why. No matter the cost, I would uncover the truth, and I'd make them pay. We sat in the sterile office, the tension pressing down on us. The hospital administrator took a deep breath and started to explain. Heather Davis gave birth on the same day as you, Mrs. Walker. We're still investigating, but it seems there was a deliberate switch. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. This is insane. Heather, she had issues. But to switch babies? My world tilted. I held on to my anger, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Where is she now? We're trying to locate her, the administrator replied. In the meantime, we'll do everything to assist you. Leaving the hospital, I felt Ethan's eyes on me. We have to find her, Lauren. She's the key. That night, as our children slept, Ethan and I confronted each other in the living room. I knew we had to face the truth. Ethan, tell me everything about Heather. What do we need to know to find her? Ethan hesitated, then began. Heather and I dated briefly before we got married. It ended badly. She was furious and threatened to make my life hell. I never thought she'd go this far. What made her so angry? He sighed, rubbing his temples. I broke it off. She wanted more, and I didn't. She felt humiliated. I nodded, processing this new information. We'll need to dig into her past. Maybe we can find her through mutual contacts or social media. The next few days were a whirlwind of calls and messages. I contacted friends from that time, combed through old records, and finally, a lead appeared. An old friend of Ethan's knew Heather had left town years ago, but had recently been seen in a neighboring city. We drove to the address we got, an old, run-down apartment building. My heart pounded as I knocked on the door. An older woman answered, her eyes wary. We're looking for Heather Davis, I said, trying to steady my voice. You found her, she replied, her eyes narrowing. What do you want? I stepped forward, my anger giving me strength. It's about our son. You swapped him with your baby. We know everything. Heather didn't flinch. Instead, a smirk spread across her face. Took you long enough to figure it out, and now what? You think you can take him back? Ethan stepped in, barely containing his rage. How could you do this? To children? To us? Heather shrugged. You broke me, Ethan. I wanted you to suffer. It was easy enough. Switch the babies and walk away. Where is our son? I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. Heather's face twisted into a cruel grin. He's fine, living in foster care. His adoptive parents couldn't handle him. He's been in and out of homes. Happy now? Tears of anger and pain welled up in my eyes. Ethan grabbed my arm, pulling me back. We're calling the authorities. This ends now. We left Heather's apartment, the weight of the revelation pressing down on us. Back in the car, I took a deep breath. We need to find Mason. Every second counts. Ethan nodded. We'll get him back. We owe it to him. The next days were a blur of court hearings and paperwork. The DNA tests confirmed everything. We had the authorization to meet Mason, who had been living in a foster home for the past year. Seeing him for the first time was like a gut punch. He was thinner than Mason, with eyes that looked far too old for a child his age. He glanced up warily as we approached. Hi, Joshua. I'm Lauren, and this is Ethan. We're your real parents, I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. He studied us for a moment before nodding. Are you taking me home? Yes, we are. We're here to bring you home, Ethan replied, his voice breaking. As we left the foster home with Joshua, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. There was so much to mend, so much damage done. But now, our first step was to heal our family and ensure that those responsible paid for their actions. Back at home, I saw Mason's confused face as he met Joshua for the first time. Mom, who's he? Mason asked, eyes wide. He's your brother, I said, kneeling beside him. We're going to be a family, together. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. Heather and Ethan's betrayal wouldn't destroy us. We would rebuild and find strength in each other. No longer victims, we were now warriors, fighting for our family's future. Confronting Ethan with the DNA results felt like reliving a nightmare. We stood in the living room, the icy silence between us cutting deeper than any words. Ethan, these results make it clear. Mason isn't biologically ours, and neither is Joshua, I said, holding the papers out for him. Ethan took the results, his hands shaking. How could this happen? How could I allow this? I stared at him, unable to contain my anger any longer. You need to tell me everything, Ethan. Every detail now. Ethan sank into the couch, burying his face in his hands. It was years ago. Heather, she somehow knew you were pregnant. She showed up one night, threatening to ruin everything. She said she would expose our affair unless I let her do something. I thought she was bluffing. What did she make you do, Ethan? I demanded. He looked up, his eyes filled with regret. She showed up at the hospital the day you gave birth. I didn't know what she planned until it was too late. I let her switch the babies, believing she wouldn't follow through, but she did. I could barely breathe. So you knew, I whispered. You let this happen and you never told me? He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I thought I could keep it buried, live with the guilt, but it consumed me. That's why I was so distant with Mason. I couldn't bear the reminder of what I allowed. I stood up, pacing the room, anger boiling inside me. Ethan, this isn't just about you feeling guilty. You've ruined our lives. You let an innocent boy suffer in foster care while we raised a child that wasn't ours. How could you do this to us? Ethan sobbed, the weight of his guilt crushing him. I'm sorry, Lauren. I thought I was protecting us, but I only made things worse. Sorry isn't good enough, I snapped. We need to find Heather and bring her to justice. We need to make sure Mason and Joshua know the truth and get the help they need. Ethan wiped his tears, a steely resolve slowly replacing his despair. You're right. We have to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. You're damn right you will, I replied, my voice cold. We contacted a lawyer first thing in the morning, outlining our case and the sordid details of Heather's actions. The lawyer assured us that charges could be pressed and justice would be served. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed to confront Heather again, this time making it clear that her deceit would have consequences. I messaged her, arranging a meeting at a secluded cafe outside town. When Ethan and I arrived, Heather was already seated, her smirk plastered across her face. Back for more? I leaned in, my voice low and fierce. This ends now, Heather. We know everything. We're pressing charges, and you will pay for what you've done. Heather's smile only widened. Oh, Lauren, do you think a few charges will scare me? I've spent my life manipulating people like you. I'll find a way out of this, and you know it. Ethan clenched his fists, stepping forward. You're not getting away this time, Heather. We have too much evidence against you. Heather laughed, the sound icy and cruel. Evidence? I've buried worse secrets. I cut her off. This isn't just about our children anymore. You've wrecked families. You should be afraid, Heather, because we're not stopping until you're behind bars. Heather's face finally showed a flicker of fear. You're making a big mistake. No, you did, I replied firmly. As Ethan and I left the cafe, I felt a determination stronger than ever. We'd take the necessary legal steps and pursue justice, no matter how long it took. Mason, Joshua, and our family deserved closure. This war wasn't just about revenge, it was about setting things right. Back home, I hugged Mason and Joshua tightly. We're gonna be okay, I whispered. We're gonna get through this together. The road ahead was daunting, but with my family by my side and the truth finally out, I was ready to face whatever came next. Heather would pay for her sins, and we would rebuild the lives she tried to destroy. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I filed for divorce, the culmination of lost trust and broken promises. Ethan and I agreed it was the best way forward. Our children needed stable, loving environments, something our fractured relationship couldn't provide. I met with our lawyer to discuss the details. Make sure the papers are airtight, I instructed. Ethan's actions can't be ignored. We need to protect the children. Understood, Mrs. Walker. We'll also proceed with the charges against Heather Davis. Her deception has serious legal ramifications, the lawyer assured me. Ethan's professional life took a nosedive as the news spread. Colleagues and clients distanced themselves, seeing him as the man who allowed such a heinous act. His reputation crumbled, leaving him to face the consequences of his past actions. During this chaos, I began my own investigation to track Heather's every move. I dug into her past, her connections, everything. Heather's life was a web of deceit, and I was determined to untangle it. One evening, I confronted Ethan. I need your help to find my real child, I said. Ethan nodded, remorse evident in his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes. We started by visiting social services, poring over records, tracing every lead. We found Heather had a history of manipulative relationships, using people for her gain. But our focus was finding our son, the missing piece of our fractured family. Finally, a breakthrough came. Our investigator called with a lead. A boy named Joshua, who had been moved from foster care to foster care, his life shadowed by instability and neglect. Lauren, we found him. Joshua is in a foster home not far from here. Ethan informed me, his eyes filled with hope and regret. We can bring him home. My heart raced as we drove to the foster home. When we met Joshua, my heart ached seeing his tired eyes have the wariness that comes from a life of uncertainty. Yet there was an undeniable connection. Joshua, we're your parents, I said, my voice trembling. We've come to take you home. Joshua studied us, his expression a mix of skepticism and hope. Really? You're my real mom and dad? Yes, Joshua, Ethan replied, tears in his eyes. We're here to make things right. Bringing Joshua home felt surreal. As Mason and Joshua met, confusion and curiosity marked their interactions. Mom, he's my brother? Mason asked. Yes, sweetheart, I said, hugging him tightly. We're all together now. Amidst the legal battles, Heather's arrogance faltered. She continued to deny responsibility, her manipulative nature trying to twist the narrative in her favor. I knew we had to expose her fully, make sure she could never do this to another family. I arranged for a meeting with a local news station. I have a story that needs to be told, I told the journalist. It's about deceit, manipulation, and the fight for justice. Heather Davis must be exposed. The exposé aired, revealing Heather's vile actions and the suffering she caused. Public outcry was swift and fierce. Ethan's professional downfall accelerated, while Heather faced legal consequences and social ostracism. In the midst of this, Ethan's attempts to plead for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. I couldn't forget the pain, or how his actions unraveled our lives. We may share the journey of finding Joshua, but our paths had irrevocably diverged. Finally, we stood together, filing the last of the paperwork. This isn't just for us, I said, holding his gaze. It's for our children. They deserve justice, stability, and love. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I know. I'm sorry for everything. As we stepped out of the lawyer's office, the weight of the world seemed a little lighter. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we had taken the first steps towards healing and justice. For Mason, for Joshua, and for ourselves, we would rebuild, stronger and united, making sure the past never repeated itself. The story wasn't just ours anymore. It was about resilience, justice, and the unyielding strength of a broken family determined to heal. The swirling chaos of our lives found a new focus, confronting Heather publicly and ensuring she faced the consequences of her actions. A few days after the news segment aired, my phone rang. It was a journalist from the local news station. Mrs. Walker, the public response to your story has been overwhelming. People want to hear from you directly. Would you consider an on-air interview? I hesitated, then nodded to myself. Yes, it's time people knew the whole truth. The next morning, I sat across from the news anchor, the studio lights glaring. The camera rolled, capturing every tense moment. Lauren, your story has touched many. What drives you to seek justice so fiercely? The anchor asked. I took a deep breath. This isn't just about my family. Heather's actions have ruined lives. She needs to be held accountable, not just for what she did to us, but to prevent her from harming anyone else. As the interview ended, I felt a grim satisfaction. Heather couldn't hide anymore. A few days later, an unexpected call came through. Lauren, this is Heather. Her voice dripped with a mix of anger and false sweetness. We need to talk. I froze, then spoke firmly. Where and when? Tomorrow at noon, the old warehouse on 5th Street, she said, the line going dead before I could respond. The next day, Ethan and I arrived at the warehouse. Heather stood in the shadows, looking irritated but unfazed. You think you've won, she spat, stepping forward, her face a mask of contempt. This isn't over. Ethan, you told me you'd keep this buried, she sneered, her eyes narrowing. Ethan took a step forward, his voice shaking with rage. You destroyed our lives, Heather. This isn't about us anymore. You need to face justice. Justice? She laughed bitterly. You think airing dirty laundry on TV will change anything? I've lived in shadows, thrived in chaos. You can't touch me. I stared at her, my resolve hardening. We will see, Heather. You're facing charges, and we'll make sure everyone knows who you are. Heather shrugged. Fine. Fight all you want. But remember, the real damage is already done. With that, she turned and walked away, her figure swallowed by the darkness. Ethan and I exchanged a weary glance, knowing that while the battle was far from over, we had taken a crucial step. The next weeks were a blur of court dates and media coverage. Each appearance chipped away at Heather's bravado. Her unrepentant nature was laid bare, fueling our determination. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. The courtroom buzzed with tension. Heather, seated at the defense table, looked unaffected, but I knew better. She thrived on manipulation, but this was a different arena. I took the stand, recounting the pain and betrayal. Ethan followed, his voice breaking as he admitted his part in the deception. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury delivered a swift verdict, guilty on multiple counts of child endangerment and fraud. Heather's face paled, her bravado crumbling. Outside the courthouse, Ethan and I stood with Mason and Joshua, the weight of the past slowly lifting. "It's over," I whispered, hugging Joshua tightly. "We've won." Joshua looked up, his eyes filled with hope. "Does this mean we can be a real family now?" "Yes, Joshua. This means we can finally heal," I replied, my voice firm. As we walked to the car, I felt a sense of closure. Heather's vile deeds were exposed, and justice had been served. The journey had been long and painful, but we emerged stronger, united in our resolve to rebuild. Later at home, the kids played in the yard, their laughter a balm to my weary soul. I watched them, feeling a glimmer of hope. We had faced our demons and against all odds come out victorious. I knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but with Heather out of our lives and the truth laid bare, we were finally free to move forward, to create the family we always dreamt of. The scars remain, but they serve as reminders of our resilience, our strength. And as I embraced my children, I knew we would face the future together, unbroken and determined. Justice was more than a verdict. It was reclaiming our lives, our dignity. It was a new beginning, and this time we would write our own story, free from the shadows of Heather's deceit. A month after the trial, life began to settle into a fragile normalcy. I stood outside our newly purchased home, taking in the fresh paint and inviting front porch. It symbolized a new beginning for my boys and me. "Mason, Joshua, come help me with these boxes," I called out from the driveway. The boys ran over, their faces filled with excitement. "This place is awesome, Mom," Mason exclaimed, grabbing a box and heading inside. Joshua followed, a bit more hesitant, but with a small smile on his face. "Can we decorate our rooms however we want?" "Of course," I replied, tussling Joshua's hair. "This is your home now. You can make it yours." As we unpacked, friends and family stopped by, offering their support. My parents arrived with a warm casserole and comforting words. "We're so proud of you, Lauren," my mom said, pulling me into a tight hug. "Thanks, Mom. It's been a tough journey, but we're finally moving forward," I replied, feeling the weight lifting from my shoulders. Despite the new beginnings, whispers of Ethan's downfall reached us. He lost his job and faced social ostracism. He called several times, apologizing, but the damage was too deep. One evening, as I put the boys to bed, Ethan showed up at the door. "Lauren, can we talk?" he asked, his voice heavy with regret. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Make it quick, Ethan. The boys are inside. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again, for everything. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be a part of their lives," he pleaded. "I don't know if that's possible right now," I replied, my voice steady. "They need stability, and your presence only stirs up the past." Ethan nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "I understand. Can you tell them I love them, and that I'm here if they ever need me?" "I will," I said, watching him walk away. Inside, I found solace in the laughter of my children. The bonds we rekindled were growing stronger every day, their smiles a testament to our resilience. A few weeks later, I received a phone call from Paula, my best friend. "Hey, Lauren, guess who just got a promotion? Dinner's on me tonight." Paula's unwavering support kept me grounded throughout our ordeal. We met at our favorite restaurant, catching up on life. "I can't believe how everything turned out," Paula said, sipping her wine. "You're stronger than you think, Lauren." "I didn't have a choice," I replied, smiling. "But now it's about building a better future for Mason and Joshua." The next day, the boys and I visited Heather's neighborhood one last time. Heather, now a pariah, watched us from her dilapidated porch, her face twisted in bitterness and regret. "Mom, can we go now?" Joshua asked, gripping my hand. "Yes, sweetie, we're done here," I replied, turning away from the remnants of our past. As we walked back to the car, I felt a sense of closure. Heather's reign of manipulation and cruelty had ended, leaving us with the strength to rebuild. Our new home became a sanctuary, filled with love and laughter. Ethan's absence allowed the healing process to take root, and our lives slowly knit back together. Every evening as the sun set, I watched Mason and Joshua play in the yard, their joy a reminder of our journey. We had endured so much, but our hearts were resilient, able to find happiness again. "Mom, watch this," Mason called out, performing an impressive cartwheel. "Great job, Mason!" I cheered, clapping my hands. Joshua joined in, his smile widening with each passing day. We're gonna be okay, aren't we, Mom? Yes, we are, Joshua, I replied, pulling them both into a hug. We're stronger together. As the days turned into weeks, our family found a new rhythm. With each passing moment, we embraced the future, determined to write our story on our own terms. Standing on the porch of our new home, I knew that we had not only survived, but thrived. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined us. Instead, they were reminders of our strength, our resilience, and the unbreakable bond of family.